What happens after we die? Does life end? Or does it take on another dimension that we can't really fathom based on our limited perception, our sensory tools, our sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell are simply too limited, too confined to understand what happens next. This is one of the biggest questions that has always plagued and faced mankind. Is there life after death? And this affects our lives today because we're so invested in the money we make, in the equity we gather, in the connections we develop. So it would be good to know where we come from and where we go, beyond the scope, the narrow scope, the myopic scope of life as we know it on earth. Please join me in this important conversation from mortality to immortality. The ongoing journey of the soul. Hi, this is Simon Jacobson, and we'll be speaking about From Mortality to Immortality, the soul's ongoing journey, the soul's ongoing story. This program is dedicated by Andrew Krieger in honor of his wife, Rhonda. What happens after we die? Is there life after death? Now, most of us, our initial reaction to that is life as we know it, especially the biological or medical definition of life, is based on certain criteria. The life force within our bodies, the soul within the body, and the vital organs functioning, the brain, the heart, other organs that are necessary for our life. And that's what defines life. When that stops, hopefully at a ripe old age in good health, life ends. But is that correct? Let's reframe the question. What is reality? Is reality based on our perception? Or is there more to reality than we fathom or can fathom with our limited tools? So it reminds me of the physicist Sir Arthur Eddington, who was asked at the early onset of quantum mechanics, with all its bizarre and counterintuitive conclusions, that scientists were completely bewildered by. An indeterministic reality on the quantum level, state of probability, as some physicists put it. Einstein dismissed it. Spooky action from a distance. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, that fundamentally, not due to lack of data, there's an uncertainty that you cannot know the position and velocity of a subatomic particle at the same time, that the observer impacts that which is being observed. So many questions were being asked and said, no one has ever seen an atom, let alone subatomic particles. You're coming to all these conclusions that are so not logical. And he gave a beautiful analogy, the analogy of the fisherman who spread his net across the 7 seas and began to gather and collect all types of fish. different species, different colors, different shapes, different sizes, and documented them. After a while, he studied his results and came to the conclusion he was about to make a major announcement. There are no fish in the sea that are shorter than a half-inch long. That was his revelation. His little daughter hears that. She says, "Daddy, we have a fish tank here in our house that has goldfish that are shorter than a half-inch long." He didn't even go to the 7 seas. And of course, when they examined the net, the ropes, the spaces were half-inch. So obviously, the spaces between the net were a half-inch long and wide. So obviously, all the fish that were shorter than a half-inch fell back into the water. So all you have to do was add one point. When you use a net of half-inch spaces, you're never going to catch fish that are shorter than half-inch long. But you don't need a study for that. You don't need a wizard for that. In other words, the flaw was not in the knowledge, it was in his instruments that he used. What instruments do we use when we say, what is life? The big question that you're asked often, you go to a Shiva call, sadly, condolences, consolation, people who lost a loved one. Where does the soul go to after its passing? Is the soul in a comfortable place? Is my beloved one, my loved one, comfortable, safe? Are they in pain? And it's always a very difficult question to answer. But then I don't remember how it came about, but something came to me, and I began answering with a somewhat of a, I don't want to use the word amusing or comic or humorous under the circumstances, but it is an imaginary conversation between electricity and a refrigerator. And here's how it goes. The refrigerator says to the electricity, "Tell me, where do you go to when they pull the plug on the refrigerator?" Of course, this can be applied to any appliance. And the electricity incredulously says to the refrigerator, "What nerve, what chutzpah. You're a little box. They just invented you 100, 200 years ago. They learned how to generate electricity, contain it in this small container box called the refrigerator. And now you think you're the center of the universe. You're where it's at. You ask me where I go? I was here long before you even were born, were even conceived of. I go back to the place where I always was. That's not defined and confined by your time and space." And you think about it, of course. Electricity is going to be defined by the confined space of a light bulb or a refrigerator or an air conditioner or another appliance. But the perspective of the box sees everything through its myopic vision, through its lens. And that lens is a very narrow one. That's exactly how it is, even more so with the soul and the body. We ask, where does the soul go to? As if this is the center of everything. This is where it's at. And the soul has to go somewhere. Maybe the soul is just back in its natural place, and we are the novelty. The little box called your body. The little box called your sensory tools and your instruments that are like the net of the fisherman, only a half-inch wide and long. When you think of it that way, life takes on a whole new meaning. Because even the life in the box, electricity in the box, is still not the refrigerator. It's just perceived as such. It's like taking something that doesn't belong in this box and you've somewhat learned to, I don't want to use the word trap, but you've learned to channel it into this place. But what you have here is something that is beyond the box. That's beyond time and space as we know it, physical time and space. Another analogy that for some reason speaks to me in context of time, imagine you're on a boat running down a river. And you see the banks of the river, you see the trees, the birds, the animals, whatever the sight may be. That's the present. As the boat continues down the river, the next stage would be the future, tomorrow. Tomorrow, the things that you see that yesterday or today you didn't see because you weren't there at the river yet. Yesterday, the past, is the banks of the river that you were at yesterday. Now, to continue the analogy, a little bird flying up in the sky lands on your shoulder. Now, this little bird had a bird's eye view and saw the bank of the river of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. But now as it lands on your shoulder, the bird is now with you. It only sees what you see. But it has the memory. Embedded in it, in its consciousness and in its psyche, is a perception of existence beyond the present that includes the past and the future. The bird is like your soul. And you, on the boat, is your body. The bird enters into your body, and now it's like the electricity confined in your box. And what happens is we start convincing ourselves, and the bird, and the electricity, no, it's all what is going on right now, the here and now. And the little birdie, like the electricity, reminds us, no, that's not the case. Yes, I'm here with you right now, but there's something beyond the now. There's something beyond the here. There's something beyond the space that you are occupying. And that's called the spirit. And the key difference between the two is one is defined by definitions, by parameters that we understand tangibly, we can measure. So if I say to you, how many apples can fit on a table? The table, your kitchen table. So you'll measure an apple, you measure the table, let's say 50 apples. And then I ask you, how many ideas can fit into your brain? You start thinking, 1 second. The brain is a lot smaller than your table. It's the size of the palm of your hand. Definitely more than 50, more than 100 ideas. Now, how's that possible? So you suddenly realize because ideas are not measured like apples, and the brain is not measured like a table. So you have to think of conceptual space, conceptual time. And then you can have millions, billions, who knows how many ideas can be contained in the neurology of the neurons of your brain, of your mind. So it's about looking at life from a different perspective. Someone says to you, what does the horizon look like? Well, depends where you're standing. If you're in a valley, you'll have one answer. If you're standing on a plateau, a second answer. If you're 10 feet up on a mountain, a hill, a third answer. If you're 100 feet up on a mountain, another answer. And if you're on the top of Mount Everest, yet another answer. Who's telling the truth? The answer is they're all telling the truth with one qualification, from my perspective. Imagine we all added that. We all have a subjective perspective. That's not a bad thing as long as you acknowledge it. It becomes a distortion when you convince that your subjective perspective is the objective reality. And in essence, that's really what God is truly about. And I'm getting beyond the stereotypes, the religious stereotypes, the positive and negative ones in the Woody Allen films and in our modern society. I'm talking about the idea of a reality that is greater than what we perceive with our sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell. Where is love? How do you measure it? Is it 5 inches long? Is it brown? Is it black? Is it a rectangle? Is it a circle? The answer is love is not defined by those human terms. Same like ideas. So it's about transcending the perspective, transcending the parameters of our defined existence. And that's when we begin to move from mortality to immortality. And we don't need to wait until after one passes. In this lifetime, if you get in touch with that electricity, with that bird, and another analogy with the flame, not just the wick of the body, but the flame, the flickering, restless flame always seeking, longing, transcending, then you bring immortality into your mortal life. Then you can experience eternity, even in the impermanent aspects of our material existence. When you show an act of kindness, an act of love, in one moment, that moment becomes forever. The magical moments in our lives are moments, but what happens is not a moment. It's the bird, it's the electricity, it's a taste of a reality greater than any particular point in time or point in space. And that's the ultimate goal, is to bridge the immortal with the mortal, the eternal with the ephemeral, the ethereal with the ephemeral, the infinite with the finite. And that is through our actions. Now, science is still seeking the unified field theory. Can we actually join together the quantum microscopic reality with the indeterministic microscopic reality, I should say, with the deterministic macroscopic reality? The day will come, but I would submit that we can do so in our personal lives. When we take our moments, when we take our corners of the world, which are finite, but we infuse it with something immortal. And again, through kindness, through love, through generosity, through gratitude. The other option is we continue to live our impermanent lives in impermanent ways. And we worship that which is temporary, that which will not last forever. Worshipping the body more than the soul, worshipping the instant gratification more than the long-term vision of life. So the choice is ours. Indeed, it's ours. But it's a tremendous awareness and epiphany when you come to understand this option. And that is why we say, the sages and the Talmud say, that the wicked, even in their lifetimes, they're dead. And the righteous, even in their deaths, they're alive. Because how do you define life and death? If you define it biological, or you define it by the power and control you have at the moment, then yes, a wicked person can prosper and dominate, unfortunately, over a righteous person. But if you define life as the eternal, immortal values that live on, even beyond our years, even beyond the containers and the refrigerators and the boats of our lifetime, then the righteous truly live forever. And the wicked do not, because their wickedness and their cruelty and their selfishness is temporary. It dies with them. And that's the nature of the material world. Everything is subject to erosion, deterioration, aging, and then death, perishing. It is the spirit that is not affected and not subject to those elements. And it is the spirit that we can hold on to right here and now. That is the power of the soul within your body. And then we understand the soul's story and the soul's journey in a whole new way. It is indeed a journey. Life is a journey. So the immortal comes into the mortal. The soul comes into, eternal soul comes into the temporary body to help infuse it with a taste of immortality. And you see that when you see parents and children, generations that pass on a tradition, a legacy. That legacy and tradition does not die. It lives and only grows and becomes stronger and stronger. We live in a time where on one hand we have such blessings of prosperity, of material gain, standard of living, longevity, medical breakthroughs. And it's only accelerating. And yet there's a tremendous disparity and dissonance between that success and the level of our spirits, our moral compass. And in many ways, as technology and all its contributions advance our lives, our emotional maturity, our emotional intelligence, our psychological well-being and health is not keeping up. So this disparity creates tremendous tension, which is therefore not a surprise of the unknowns and the uncertainty and the anxiety and the distress so many people feel today. Because if you don't nourish your soul as much as you do your body, if you don't nourish your spirit and your values and your transcendent vision with the realities on the ground of your material life, the split becomes unbearable. No surprise, therefore, the growing rate of the use of drugs, fentanyl, other drugs, alcohol, other addictions. The very word addiction is an attachment disorder, attached to the wrong things. So you become attached and dependent. Instead of freeing your spirit to become immortal, the immortal becomes trapped and enslaved by the moment. That's addiction. When in truth, the healthy form of attachment is that your mortality becomes connected with higher purpose, and it lifts you up to allow you to soar and spread your wings, instead of taking that soaring spirit and confining it in the prison, the tentacles of fear and insecurity, and all other addictions that keep us so trapped. So the paradox is so glaring today. On one hand, as I said, so much success in the material world and connections of all sorts, but when it comes to human connections, relationships, parents and children, spouses, communities, you see a breakdown. So more than ever, we need to join these two worlds. The world of soul, the world of body. The world of the indeterministic energy, channeling it and harnessing it into the world of a deterministic reality of the here and now. And yes, to turn the ordinary into extraordinary, the natural into supernatural, the moment into forever. To hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. And that is dependent on our actions and on our behavior. To recognize what's primary and what's secondary. Your body is a boat. It's a vehicle, but not the captain of the ship is your soul, the bird. That should inform the body. The body should not be directing the soul should be directing the body. By finding and discovering your vision and your mission statement in life, why you're here, and then using all your resources to fulfill that very purpose, that higher purpose. And then the soul, in its journey, including the journey in this small little space, this leg of the journey, confined in a body, becomes something that's part of a bigger narrative, a bigger story. The eternal story of your life. From mortality to immortality. The soul's ongoing story. The soul's ongoing journey. May you ride it well. Use it to the fullest. All in good health. May you make an impact in the world that actually changes reality now and forever. A ripple effect, a butterfly effect. Thank you so much. This has been Simon Jacobson. MeaningfulLife.com is our website where you can find a full array of materials that can help you live a meaningful life. Life skills, tools, articles, videos, audio, you name it. Today we have an AI tool that you can use. If this message was meaningful to you, please share with others. Subscribe to our offerings, to our YouTube channel, and please send me your thoughts, your feedback, your comments. Be blessed and be well.
This program is brought to you by the Meaningful Life Center. Please help us continue our programs. Make even a small contribution at meaningfullife.com/donate.